In this video, we'll describe advanced SaTScan input and output features for designing and analysis to prospectively detect a communicable disease outbreak. To follow along interactively, download the corresponding sample analysis files from the SaTScan website at satscan.org. After you watch this video, you should be able to run a SaTScan analysis that uses descriptive variables in the case input file, generate additional output files including line lists, maps, and temporal graphs, and request that SaTScan distinguish newly detected events in line lists and map output files when conducting daily analyses. This is a sample case input file for prospective spacetime analysis in SaTScan. To conduct spacetime analyses, SaTScan only requires the case file contain the location ID, event date, and event count. But you can include additional case level variables in the case input file that aren't used in the analysis, but may help with output interpretation. For example, including age group as an additional column and requesting it be included in output files may reveal a potential outbreak in certain age groups. To request that SaTScan include these additional columns in a line list of cases or on a map, first open the case file import wizard. After loading your case file, you'll come to this window where you can indicate that the case file contains additional descriptive variables. The case file must be formatted so that there is one row per event with a unique ID to use this feature. If you're not interested in producing a line list of events, you have the option to format your case file to be aggregated to sum the counts at each location by date, as described in the SaTScan analysis setup video. Checking this box and populating the individual ID field will automatically prompt SaTScan to produce a line list of cluster events. You can also specify descriptive latitude and longitude fields for including in the line list and mapping event locations. These coordinates are for descriptive purposes only. SaTScan uses the coordinates in the coordinate input file in the analysis, which correspond to the centroid of the census tracts, not the individual event locations. You can add additional variables to the line list in the table below and change variable names for display. Categorical variables with 12 or fewer categories will also be included in map output files that can be requested on the Output tab of the main analysis window. SaTScan can also automatically distinguish which events are newly added to identified clusters in daily analyses if you specify an individual's cache file in this box. This feature is helpful when assigning new cases for investigation, for example. A cache file is a cumulative list of events in identified clusters. And if you point to a cache file here, event IDs that are newly added to identified clusters will be appended to the list. SaTScan can then distinguish these newly added events in line lists and on maps. A sample cache file is provided in the sample analysis files accompanying these video tutorials on the SaTScan website. If you're testing an analysis and running it multiple times, keep a copy of the original cache file so that new events will continue to correctly flag as new. By default, all clusters are included in the line list, but you can define a recurrence interval cutoff in the Other Output tab of the Advanced Output Features window, so that clusters that are below this threshold are excluded, which can be helpful to reduce the volume of output for review. We typically use 100 days as this cutoff. This is an excerpt of the line list output for the sample analysis. There's one row for each event in detected clusters with recurrence intervals over the chosen cutoff. It contains the additional descriptive variables in the case file that we selected to include in the file import wizard, and a new individual column that distinguishes which events are newly added to identified clusters according to the cache file. For example, these 5 events were newly added to cluster 1 since the last time the analysis was run. This can be helpful information because we often want to prioritize newly added cases during an outbreak investigation. If no cache file is specified, all rows will be displayed as new. Newly added cases do not need to have event dates on the most recent day. They may be older cases that newly appear in today's identified clusters. The line list output can support cluster interpretation by helping reviewers find patterns. For example, many events in cluster 1 appear to be in the greater than 80 age group, which might suggest an outbreak among the elderly population. Maps are another tool that can support cluster interpretation. You can request map output files on the Output tab of the main window. We typically request HTML and KML output files for visualizing clusters in Google Maps and Google Earth. Here's an example of an HTML map output file using the circular scanning window in SaTScan. You can interact with this map to learn more about detected clusters, which is covered in detail in the output interpretation video tutorial. If you specify descriptive latitude and longitude coordinates in the import file wizard, event locations can be overlaid on the map. By default, event locations over the entire study period are displayed and color-coded as being inside or outside the selected clusters. Here, red dots are events inside the cluster geographical area and temporal window, and white dots are events that are outside the cluster. You can also use any other categorical descriptive variable specified in the import file wizard to group events by color or shape by navigating to the Advanced Options window. For example, here we're requesting that SaTScan distinguish events by age group using shapes. Categorical variables must have 12 or fewer categories to be included here as an option. You can also change the dot size to more clearly see the event locations. Displaying cases by category like this can also help reveal demographic patterns. For example, it looks like most of the events in the cluster are diamonds, triangles, and stars, which are shapes that correspond to older age groups. You can also request that SaTScan distinguish which events are newly added in the HTML map output file by navigating to the Advanced Features window and checking the box for first time in cluster. The bright red category in the legend indicates that this is the first time these events are included in a cluster, and the dark red category indicates previously identified events. We often want to prioritize newly added cases during an outbreak investigation, so it's helpful to see where they're located relative to other cases in the cluster. On this day's analysis, 5 events were newly added to cluster 1. 3 of the bright red dots are diamonds, 1 is a triangle, and 1 is a circle. The corresponding events in the line list confirm that 3 of the newly identified events in the cluster are in the greater than 80 age category. These 3 cases might be prioritized for investigation of a possible outbreak among the elderly. The 4th case in the 65 to 79 year age group might also be assigned for investigation if resources allow. The KML map can also display clusters and overlay cases in Google Earth. It has much of the same functionality as the HTML map output file. We also recommend outputting temporal graphs for review, as these provide additional information that can be helpful for cluster investigation. We typically restrict that temporal graphs be output for clusters with a recurrence interval greater than or equal to a threshold, for example 100 days, again to reduce the volume of output. Temporal graphs provide a visualization of cluster information over time. To learn more about these output files and how to interpret them, see the Output Interpretation video tutorial.